Hello all. My name is Raymond Smith the sixth. Middle name Austin. However, don't let my name fool you. My father is a white man, thus last name Smith. My mother, full white American Celtic, of Celtic origin as far as the immigration where they immigrated from, also Dutch and Frankish. And then my mother, however, is oops, sorry. My mother is full Koshayan from the Federated States of Micronesia. If you don't know where that is in the middle of the ocean, pretty much in the Pacific Ocean. Now, basically today, what I'm doing is the story. Some of you have posted, saw that I was going to, elaborate on my other posts I had about my astral projections and my life story. So I have so many stories, but I guess I'm going to start from the beginning. So, a long time ago, before I was born, my father, a white man again, I was in the Peace Corps. And he actually, and if you don't know what the Peace Corps is, it's basically people who go around in other third world countries and try to help people. They're American themselves, my father being American. So he started his Peace Corps mission. He went to Micronesia, not the Federated States of Micronesia. Micronesia is a big body of land. It's a big body of water, rather. And there's all these different islands. Well, basically Micronesia is to Polynesia and Melanesia. Those are the three main groups of islands that makes up Oceania and that makes you Pacific Islander. Well, anyways, so my father went to the first group of islands he went to is the Marshall Islands, which is in Micronesia, and he started his mission there. Ended up meeting a woman, ended up having 3 children. Now, long story short, my father ended up ending his relationship with that woman because she cheated on him. Okay, he actually found her cheating on him. So, however, my father, still being in the Peace Corps, still had to fulfill his duties, and his next duties was to go to another island in Micronesia. This time, the island was Koshai. So he had to leave his children with his now ex-wife to go fulfill his duties because of his job. So he goes to this island called Koshai. He helps build the high school there, and then eventually ends up meeting another woman who ended up being my mother. And shortly after that, they ended up getting married. Now, after they got married, my mother found out that my father had 3 other children on the Marshall Islands, the other group of islands. My mother said, because they want to go back to the United States eventually. My mother said, let us go get your children. Now, in Micronesia, there's thousands of islands, and each island has their own language. Well, luckily, my father, Papa Austin, which is my middle name, Austin, he was adopted by missionaries from Texas, thus the name Austin. He actually spoke many languages, specifically Japanese, which he actually was tortured by Japanese and ended up saving our island of Koshai being genocide because he understood Japanese and also understood English, in which case he actually called broke into the Japanese base there in Koshai and actually radioed rather a battleship to save our people, which that's another story. Anyway, but my grandfather spoke Japanese, English, Koshain, which is the language of our island, but he also spoke Barchalese, which is the island that my father first was at. So my grandfather, Papa Austin, agreed to come with my mother and my father to the Marshall Islands to essentially have a tribal meeting to broker a deal to get the children back. Because essentially in the islands, the saying that it takes a village to raise a child, it's very true. Really, when you're born into a village, that you're a part of that village, and you are raised by the people in the family. Maybe not just your mother or your father. Oftentimes, there's a short adoption process, in which case a child will be raised by its auntie and uncle as its own mother and father, because we all live in the same village, or all these islands are very similar. So the reason why I say that is because they ended up having my father and my mother and my grandfather went to the Marshall Islands to broker a deal, this tribal council, to get my brother, sister, and my other brother back. So they went, and it was successful. However, it was successful in the fact that my father got his eldest son and his only daughter. However, the other son had to stay, and that was a part of the rule. Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child. That the village said, okay, you can have these 2 children, but this other child is staying with us. In which case, I have his brother that I've never met, who still lives in the Marshall Islands. Anyways, so during that time, after the meeting, my father's ex-wife was not very present during that entire time. But towards the end, she comes out running and starts screaming at my mother, screaming in Marshallese, the language that my mother does not understand, however my grandfather does. Screaming out of these things. My mother then asked my grandfather, what was she saying? My grandfather told her, oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing. My mother is still badgering. What was she saying? I said, oh, it's just some sort of, black magic curse. She's like, what? Black magic curse. Saying, oh, don't worry about it, honey. I said, Mom, she's saying, Dad, tell me what this is. My grandfather told her that she was saying a black magic curse on your firstborn son. When you have a firstborn son, something to this effect of he will see demons, or he will be a demon in and of itself, or cursing me, saying that I'm going to be cursed and have this life of such things. And I say this because my mother, did actually get freaked out by that, because in Koshai, in the islands, we converted to Protestants, to be Protestants. But prior to that, we had our own religion. It was a very brutal religion, very similar, I guess you would say, to like maybe Mayan Incan, as far as human sacrifices, wars to please the gods, things of that nature. My great great grandfather was actually the last king of our island, Alex Akanka. However, the converting to Protestantism, to being Protestants, happened, hundreds and hundreds of years before my grandfather was the last king. My great grandfather, excuse me, apologies. So that being said, we stuck to the Protestant religion, the island of Koshai. However, there was one thing that we could never deny. That one thing that we could not let go of is our connection to the spirit world. Not just the spirit world, but spirits being in the physical world. It was something that we forgot all of it. We erased most of our history, rather, as far as religion. We stopped tattoos. Our tribal tattoos were banned. Our old literature was banned as far as religious practice. Old religious practices were banned, were forgotten. Anything of that sort. However, the one thing that we could not ban is because it was something that we, as a people, understood, is that we could never ban the idea of spirits walking among us and the spirit world. And it's still even a common practice that in Koshai, when someone is on their deathbed, a family member will go visit them and tell them, it's like, listen, when you die and you come and visit me, please don't scare me. And they say, okay. It's a common practice. So anyway, so my mother had this instilled in her head that her son was going to be of this. It just suddenly freaked out that, it's like, oh, you know what, it was just old Marshallese black magic. We're Protestants. We don't believe in things of that nature. The reason why I say this is because, fast forward to 1989, my parents then moved from the islands to Stockton, California, which case is where I was born, in Stockton. And later on through my life as a child, I would tell my mother these things about what I would see in my dreams. I would wake up screaming at night to the point that I actually slept in my parents' room until I was almost 12 because I was so afraid of what I was seeing in my dreams. Now, so I lived in Stockton for maybe 6 months or so. I ended up moving to San Diego County as a child, very young. I was maybe like 1 or 2. And there's this house that I lived in for most of my life. And so I would have these dreams, and to be honest with you, I had no labeling for it because I didn't know what it was. I thought everyone had these dreams. I thought that everyone did what I did when I slept, and meaning the fact that I would sleep on my parents' floor. I would fall asleep, but then I would wake up. I'd wake up on my ceiling in my parents' house. This is in my dream. I'd wake up floating in my parents' room, looking at my body on the ground, asleep. I'd be floating on my parents' ceiling, and I'd float down to the ground, and I'd walk around. And all these dreams were where I was asleep. If I fell asleep in my parents' bedroom, which I normally did on the floor, my dreams would take place in my parents' bedroom, and also take place throughout my house. I could walk around my house. And those were my dreams my entire childhood. And I would do this often, and it was dark. It was normally very dark in my house. Sometimes the ground was like foggy, foggish. And sometimes I would encounter things, I would encounter shadows with pairs of eyes, just like mine or yours, iris, people, all that stuff. And they would talk to me. It was unsettling to me because it was just felt so real because I'd be in my parents' room, I'd be in the living room, I'd be somewhere else, and even if I didn't fall asleep in my parents' room, like if I fell asleep downstairs, even during the daytime, I would wake up downstairs. I would when I wake up, meaning that my dream would be of where I slept, and I'd walk around my house. And I would tell my mother these things. I would tell her, I was like, Mom, I had this crazy dream about, these people, these shadows talking to me in the house. And my mother said, oh, don't worry about it. Just, it's your imagination. And to her, she was actually freaked out, but she never wanted to convey that to me. So, oh, baby, you're just having bad dreams. And, we would talk a lot about Jesus and talking a lot about God, and that, God is protecting you. It's like, if God is protecting you, so you have nothing to worry about. So that did put me at ease in a sense. But my mother was uneven, unsettled by this. There was also a time, it was even things that happened to me during, not even when I was just asleep. There was one time where I was daytime. My mother was cleaning the house. I was very small. I was probably like a year old. I was just kind of learning how to walk. She put me on the floor and she started vacuuming. And when you vacuum, it's a little loud, right? She's vacuuming around the house. I was in the living room. Then she comes back to the living room, and I'm gone. And my mother's like, okay, she's freaking out because I'm not that good at walking yet. She's freaking out. She's running around the house looking for me, can't find me. She freaked out so bad she even called the police. So she ended up calling the police, and he's like panicking at this moment. And for some reason, she decides, what? While she's on the phone with the cops, that she's gonna go in the back. She's gonna walk to my back, go in the backyard. Well, she goes to my sliding door, and the door is locked. Now, on top of that, the not only was the door locked, but the front door was locked. Every door was locked because that's one of the first things she was thinking: did somebody come into my house to steal my child? And the door was locked. And not just that though. It's a sliding door. I was 1 year old. I couldn't reach up to unlock it. However, it was locked. But she unlocked it and walked outside while she's on the phone with the police. Ended up, she could hear me faintly. And so she started running through the backyard trying to look for me. However, she couldn't find me. She then ran to the side of the house, the side yard. And I was nowhere to be found, but she could hear me. And she walked to the side gate, and the side gate was locked with the padlock. It was locked. So she couldn't open it. She didn't have the key on her, but she could hear me. She could hear me on the other side. So she runs back inside, goes to the front door, which is locked, unlocks the front door, goes to the side, and there I am. And there I am, sitting in front of a garbage can, crying, pointing at it. She's like, Raymond, what happened? Where do you go? What are you doing here? How did you get here? And I'm crying, and I'm pointing at the trash can. And my mother said she was so terrified because she didn't know what it was going to be in this trash can when she opens it. And she opens it, and it was no one. There's no one in the trash can. My mother never told me this story directly. She told it to my wife. She told it to other people in my family because she was afraid. So this happened when I was 1. But, these dreams that I was having, I was probably maybe 4 or 5. I was able to comprehend what a dream is, and I would convey that to her. So at that point, she was afraid that hearing what I was saying, that I was seeing these spirits in my dream, or, a pair of eyes, shadows talking to me. And my dreams were just me walking around the house, my house. It was, or anywhere I slept, but specifically this house that I grew up in. So anyways, I ended up having that dream again where I was floating and I landed on the ground. And there was one time though, however, it was a shadow with a pair of eyes sitting there. And I walked up to it and just screaming at me, just screaming at the top of its lungs, go back, go back, go back, and just screaming at me at the top of his lungs. And I was so afraid, I ended up falling down. It was like I was crawling to my body. I was asleep, but I was crawling to my body and I woke up. And it was so traumatic that after that, I actually didn't have dreams like that anymore. I told it to my mother, and my mother again, oh, baby, you just had a bad nightmare. Just, God loves you, God is protecting you, you'll be okay. So I actually ended up having astral projecting. And again, I'm saying astral projecting now because I found out what was happening to me later on in my life. But I didn't know at the time. I thought those were my dreams. Fast forward to me I want to say I was in my early 20s. The movie Insidious just came out. I watched it with my family. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Insidious. It's a pretty good movie. It's a scary movie. But there's a young boy, and he describes that when he would go to sleep, he's the one of the main characters. He described when he went to sleep that he'd be floating up and he could see his body laying on the ground. Now, while I'm watching this movie, it's in the movie theaters, and I'm like, my mouth is like wide open. I'm just like, whoa, dude, that's crazy. I'm in my head, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I had dreams like that. And as they were describing it throughout the movie, he would dream of basically being in his house. And when they basically ended up happening, he ended up, getting captured by some demon and whatever. And he was captured within his own house. And these people would go to sleep and they would astral project basically and walk around the house. Like they would fall asleep and they would wake up in that house, right? And while I was watching, I was like, dude, this is fucking crazy. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like I had these dreams like this. I was like, not only I had a dream like this, like I only dreamed like that as a child. So after the end of the movie, I'm with my nephews and nieces, and I talked to them. I'm like, whoa, how crazy was that? He's like, dude, astral projecting. It's like, dude, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, there's a term for it. Like, dude, I did that. I did that my entire childhood. I was like, no, I did that in your house. Cause I was talking to my niece. Cause now my niece, and my nephew, my sister owns the house that I grew up in. My parents sold it to them. And I was like, dude, I did that in your house. I do that all the time. You guys had dreams like that too, right? They're like, no. I was like, wait, you guys never had that dream where you're like, floating up wherever you fall asleep and you'd be looking at yourself and then you would just be walking around where you fell asleep? It's like, no. I'm like, really? I'm like, none of you had the dream like one time? Like, no, never. I was like, whoa. I was like, why? Like, why is that? Like, why? My nephews and nieces were asking me, like, why are you okay? And I was like, dude, as a child, like, I only had that dream. I only had a dream where I fell asleep. I'd be looking at my body. And I would walk around where I fell asleep, specifically in my parents' bedroom, which is now, my sister's room, because they own it. And I was telling her, I was like, man, that's crazy. I had no idea there was a term for it. I was like, man. Anyways, so I ended up. I ended up later on spending the night at my sister's house. And my sister's house being the house that I grew up at. And I didn't think of anything of it. It was just, me going to my sister's house. I was with my nephews and nieces. It was late. We watched a late movie. So this time I went to sleep downstairs on the couch. So I went to sleep downstairs on the couch, just like normal things, nothing. I mean, it was kind of freaked out by the movie, but it was just funny to me at that point. So I fell asleep on my sister's couch, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I sat up from where I was on the couch. I was laying face down, I was laying on my stomach, and I sat up, and I just noticed I was like something was a little off. Like it was. I woke up. I was in my sister's house. I was in the living room where I fell asleep, and I was just like, oh man, this is crazy. I was like, why is everything looking a little fuzzy? And I tried to look at the time, and I don't have the best vision, but I couldn't really see it. But I just noticed everything was just really, really fuzzy. And I was just like, because I was exactly like I was in the living room. And then I started thinking about it, and I said, holy shit, I'm asleep. Like, I'm not awake right now. So I kind of freak out a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, I'm asleep. All right, I'm going to wake up. So I go, and I can look down and I can see my body right there laying down. Now at this time it was dark, so it just like the shadow basically. It was just me, just like this shadow outline of a person. And I'm just like, oh shit. So I lay down. Try on my body, and I try to wake up. So at this time, this is the first time it ever happened to me. I got sleep paralysis. I couldn't wake up. I was just like trying to like struggle. And I was just struggling, just trying to get up, and I would just feel my body just very tense. And then there was this silence. There was like this deafening silence, like it was like a, and I couldn't, and there was no noise. Again, I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. And then I heard it. I heard this deep voice. You're back. It says to me, you're back. You're back. You're back. You're back. You're back. You're back. Screaming at me. And I start screaming. I'm like, I'm trying to break this sleep paralysis wake. I'm like, trying to break up. You're back. And then all of a sudden he stopped screaming, and I could hear it running through my house. Like, I could feel the footsteps. Like, it was running in a big circle. But not only that, it was no running circle. It was running up and down my back. Like, it was running around the house, and my back was a part of the track that it was running. And I could feel it going up my heels, the back of my head like this. And I'm like running, trying to break my supply system. I'm like, and I finally break it. And it was like I was holding my breath. I was like, like I woke up, and I just sat there, and I woke up on my sister's couch, face down, just where I was, and I just looked around and was like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened? And I'm just like freaking out, and I look, and now I can actually see the oven that I was trying to look at to see what time it was, and it's around 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember exactly, but it was in the 3 o'clock hour, and I was like, holy shit, like that was crazy. And I had that because I don't know why, but I found out that what I was doing was astral projecting as a child. I went back to that same house. I had the dream. I astral projected, I guess. I woke up where I fell asleep, right in the couch, and I heard this voice, you're back, you're back, you're back, you're back. And I could feel it, I could hear it running around the house, I could feel it running up and down my back. So that is the first step of my awakening, I would say. Because as a child, I denied it. My mother helped me deny it, and I denied it my entire life. I denied all these things that was happening to me. At this point, I didn't even know about that black magic curse thing that I was talking about. I didn't even know about that. Because the next day, I ended up telling my wife. I told my wife about it. I was like, man, dude, I told her about the dreams I used to have as a child. I told her that I found out what it was called. I called it astral projecting. I told her all these things, and I told her about the dream that I had the night before about, I heard this thing screaming at me, you're back, you're back. I could hear the footsteps. I could hear it running up and down my back. And I was freaked out. I was like, man, I don't know. I used to talk to my mom about these dreams, and she said that it was just nothing. I even had daytime hallucinations as a child, and I would tell them to my mother, and she said, oh, there was nothing. Like I would see things. Hands reaching at me sometimes. Like I remember one time I was in my garage and I was trying to get my toy, and this was awake. I wasn't asleep at all, and it was in my parents' car underneath the passenger seat, like right underneath, and I saw it, and I was going to grab the toy, and when I went to go grab for the toy, this hand put its hand over my toy. It was really quick. I remember it specifically had very ghoulishly white, pale white with long fingernails and fishnet, like a fishnet stocking, fingerless gloves, fishnet stocking, but like it's like a sleeve, but they're fingerless gloves of fishnet stocking with long pale hands, pale fingers with long fingernails, and just put his hand over the toy and reached back, and I freaked out. But anyways, and as I grew up, I called it daytime hallucination. But anyway, I told this to my wife. I started telling these things to my wife. Then later on, my wife ended up talking to my mom about it, confiding. She had all these things. Already had this really crazy dream. He told me about all these crazy dreams that he had. And then my mother told her the story about that black magic curse. And then she told her the story about that story I told you about me being a baby, or about when I was a baby, about her calling the police because she thought I was kidnapped, and I was on the other side. I was in the front yard, on the other side of a side gate that was locked, padlocked, and all the doors were locked. I told her that story. My wife ended up telling me the story. My mother was just never wanted to tell me about it. But that event, though, with me watching Insidious, finding out what astral projecting is, having that dream, was my first step in my awakening, first step of me starting accepting the things that were happening to me. Now, at that time, I did not accept it, though. My father was a biologist, so I reasoned with science, but it took me until last year, 2018, for me to start really accepting my spiritual awakening. But that was the first when I started really realizing what was happening, what was going on in my life. Thank you for listening. I may do more videos, but this is my very first one. I have too many stories and too many things to say, but thank you for listening. Later.